Today we are talking about Jiddu Krishnamurti, one of the more modern philosophers we will talk about this year. So Jiddu Krishnamurti, 1895 to 1986. He was an Indian philosopher who later on spent most of his year as an educator. He was found as a 14-year-old boy. He was discovered by an organization called the Theosophical Society. They've been looking for what they called a world teacher. This world teacher, in their estimation, would be someone who could unite all of the different religions and philosophies of the world. And Krishnamurti was chosen as a young boy because he showed certain traits that they were looking for. He was trained for a number of years, and he became quite popular as a speaker. As we talk about, after 20 years of doing training and giving many popular talks in speeches across the world, he gave a surprise speech at the age of 34 where he renounced being this world teacher. He looked at a society that basically allowed him to live in luxury while so many others were poor. He looked at society as being sort of toxic, of being in need of regeneration. And so he renounces his position as this world teacher, and he spends the last 50 years of his life becoming an actual teacher of his own philosophy. This is the Krishnamurti School in Ojai, California. He opened up a number of schools, a couple of in England and a number in India as well. His schools looked at different concepts than typical schools would. Here's him giving a lecture to students, I think during the 1970s. His new philosophy does not directly identify with any specific religion or philosophy that came before. While it takes a number of concepts from Eastern philosophy, it definitely tries to get away from the dogma or the belief system that most of philosophies and religions have. Here's a picture of him at a very young age. His philosophy that he taught in the schools and through many writings and speeches over the years relied on observing life directly. He calls life truth. And through this direct observation that is unclouded by all of our mind nonsense, all of our labels, all of our thoughts, our opinions, all of that stuff is not what he was looking to get at. He said we need to observe life in its true form, what is. And he also called for the need to radically reimagine, to look at life, look at the way society operates, look at the way we operate, our inner psyche, look at the way schools operate. These things needed to be reimagined to have a more peaceful, productive world. So, philosophy as a love of truth. Earlier in the year, we talked about what is philosophy on day 2, and one of the definitions was thinking about thinking, to get people out of their complacent, sleepwalking states. And as the years gone on, we've covered some Western and Eastern philosophy. While Western philosophy is full of lots of argument and analyzation and deep thought, Eastern philosophy is a little more about controlling your thoughts and maybe limiting them where they need to be to see the role we play in maybe not accepting life because of our over-analytical thoughts. Krishnamurti's view was, simply put, philosophy isn't about thoughts and opinions. It's not about beliefs and theories that the mind gets stuck with, the closed-minded view that Western philosophy is all about, but rather truth. That's what he said philosophy is. Truth is the complete perception and acceptance of whatever is right now. The car crash, or the tree, or the man walking down the road, or losing the job, whatever is, and it's truth. He said we need to learn to love this truth. Loving it at times could be hard. It's the concept of amor fati we've talked about earlier. But before our mind begins to judge every moment of our life, meaning we perceive life and then we judge it, he said we need to learn to accept and love what is. So as long as the mind is comparing, there is no love. Love meaning love of the moments, love of an acceptance of whatever is. So as long as the mind is comparing, there is no love, and the mind is always judging, comparing, weighing, looking to find out where the weakness is. So where there is comparison, there is no love. So the concept would be you're watching the sunrise, and it's the most beautiful sunrise, and the birds are chirping, and you're very peaceful, and then you think, oh wow, I wish she was here. And your mind compares the moment that is to the moment that could have been. and then you suffer. And our schooling, unfortunately in America, is based upon judging and comparing. And Krishnamurti said, the way the mind is, it actually keeps us away from acceptance because of this phenomena. It is what it is. If you've been in my class long enough, you've heard me mention this probably 10,000 times. What it simply means is whatever the situation is, that's what it is. Our opinions, our liking or disliking, have no relevance. A kid a couple years ago said, well, I like this one better. It is what it is, but it will be what you make it. Which is a positive message, but a lot of times we can't make life what we want it to make it. If someone dies, it is what it is. You can't change those facts. And so a different way of looking at it perhaps is, it is what it is, not what it should be. We have a little voice in our head that's always thinking, if I was in charge, it would be this. Or it's thinking, that's not fair, they should have done that. It is what it is means that's the truth. Before you have an opinion, Krishnamurti said we need to focus on what is. So, truth means the instantaneous awareness or perception of whatever happens. It's not your emotions, how you feel about what happened. It's not about the stories you have in your head of woe is me. It's not about life that's been determined by what we already know. And that's the problem. In the American school system, we fill your minds full of facts, and you believe these facts. In the conditioning / brainwashing / almost hypnosis, you begin to fill your mind up through what's called dogma, which is a group of beliefs. And because you know things, you can't really perceive truth as is, according to Krishnamurti. Here's him at a later age teaching. If one wants to see a thing very clearly, one's mind must be very quiet, without any prejudices, the chattering, the dialogue, the images, the pictures. All that must be put aside to look. It's interesting when I teach some of the Eastern philosophical concepts. For instance, anger is unnecessary and it only affects you. The Buddha line of drinking poison and thinking the other person will die is an idea of anger. Kids hate that. A lot of kids will say, oh, I have a right to feel the way I feel. I have a right to be angry. And you do. And when I teach this stuff, I can see kids stiffen up and cross their arms in a sort of body language resistance of what I'm saying. He's saying we can't really see and hear what is when we're already judging as it's being presented to us. So here's an image I used at the beginning of the year, life as a garden hose. The truth we can't usually control. We think we can, but the more you try to control life, the more out of control you will feel. According to Eastern philosophy, we must begin to learn to love life in all of its crazy, beautiful, lovely, and terrible ways. As the Buddha says, the 8 worldly winds, sometimes 4 of them are good and 4 of them are bad. Life's going to do what life's going to do. We can't really control it as much as we think. But yet we have fear and anxiety that life isn't going to turn out the right way. Although nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. Sometimes you're going to get wet. Sometimes life is not going to cooperate. Eastern philosophy and Krishnamurti specifically say we must accept that. We must learn to accept whatever is as the truth. Anything else we add to it with our opinions is unnecessary and actually makes life more difficult. So reality versus truth. If you distinguish the two terms, reality is the thought that you create, which is based upon everything you know from the past. Being that schools fill your minds full of knowledge, you have beliefs. Something bad happens. Say you had a boyfriend who had red hair, and a new boy moves into school. You'll immediately judge him through the lens of what you've had in the past. You create your own reality. All of your judgments and beliefs and your hopes and your grudges and your desires and your assumptions. We do a lot of that. I know why she did that. It's because she cut in front of me in 3rd grade. We make up our reality. These ideas we invent in our minds, and they try to allow us to understand, and I put that in quotes, because we want to feel more in control of what's happening. The world is unpredictable, but yet people try to get into a routine so they feel like they know what's happening next. Reality is not truth. They are two entirely separate things, because reality adds its own colorings and opinions and creates something entirely different. You and I can both watch somebody slip on the ice, You might laugh hysterically. I might be horrified for them falling. Those two opinions of what happens, those are the different realities that we create. Thought is so cunning, so clever, that it distorts everything for its own convenience. It's really odd when you catch yourself taking whatever is and kind of molding it into your own reality based on your thinking. So, truth is not what you want it to be, it is what it is, and you must bend to its power. Most people don't want to bend to the power, but truth is whatever just happened. We then interpret it and we create a false reality because our mind has stories. It's false in that most of the time, in most people, it's a negative reality. We create it, and that's where the power lies. We can't control truth, but we can control our reality, which includes maybe minimizing negative emotions and fears, because it's our opinion about the truth that causes this reality. So truth is whatever just happened and it's real. Reality is what we think and how we feel about what just happened. It's not real, though we think it is. We get stuck in our minds and we begin sleepwalking through the 24/7 real world that's happening brand new in front of us. We close our minds because we know what's going on, and we get stuck in our own reality. And so that's the idea. Different people are going to think different things are true just from their different perspectives, from their different realities that they create. The skill of Eastern philosophy is to become a little more skillful at creating a reality that's more pleasant and brings more contentment. According to Krishnamurti, the point of philosophy is to break the conditioning of the mind and the consciousness of humanity. I mean, one of the goals of my class, as I've discussed, is I want to break the mind that's conditioned to look at life in a certain way. So his view of philosophy is to end the illusion of people mistaking reality for truth. And most people do. They don't see what is, they see their interpretations of it. They make those interpretations, and then they suffer through them. He also said truth is a pathless land. So what does that mean? It doesn't matter what religion or philosophy or guru or teacher you have. Anybody can take part and have a complete understanding of what is. But when you get stuck in different facts and paths and belief systems, it obscures it. A mind that's completely full of knowledge really cannot understand the truth because it's trying to interpret it through its own lens. So your past experiences and your beliefs are going to cause you to create something different than what is. And so once again, trying to get back to the understanding of truth and acceptance and perhaps love of it. Choiceless observation. Now this is the main point, the center of his philosophy. We need to really focus on just observing and allowing. I like that phrase, allowing what is to reveal itself. If we view each moment without judgment and disapproval or analyzation, you'll be much more content. Here's where kids begin to complain and say, well, it's boring. I want to actually have an opinion. I can't have an opinion. There are times you can think. There are times you can analyze. There are times you can have opinions. But if you're honest with yourself, most people overthink and overanalyze, and they put themselves in negative mind spaces that they have to suffer through because of their disapproval of what is. It's a discipline that's difficult after years of having a world that we think is not fair, woe is me, to realize it is what it is, and I'm the one who's creating the woe through creating a negative reality. The ability to observe without evaluating is the highest form of intelligence. Just to take in the concept without creating all of the mental noise. Here's a longer quote. When you call yourself an Indian or a Muslim or a Christian or a European or anything else, you are being violent. Do you see why it's violent? Because you are separating yourself from the rest of mankind. When you separate yourself by belief, by nationality, tradition, it breeds violence. So a man who is seeking to understand violence does not belong to any country, to any religion, party, or system. He is concerned with the total understanding of mankind. I talk in class about, the belief that's come about recently, or not recently, but it's been revisited, of American exceptionalism, that we are somehow better than everybody else in the world because we are Americans. I personally find that belief to be slightly foolish, and just the labeling of us versus them creates so many problems. When you realize the number of lives that have been lost in the name of what's the name of God or what color flag we have, it's amazing. He said those thoughts cause separation, and those separations lead to violence. He felt we needed to regenerate society. He felt society itself needed an absolute change of the mindset. Part of his teachings at school and his books were in regards to this concept. We need to get away from these mental and verbal labels that actually analyze the truth, and it turns it into us and them. It's unfortunate to see right now in America how Republicans and Democrats have splintered. Nobody's an American anymore, but we believe what we believe on our side. We're different from them. We are better than them. All of this competition between groups causes fear, and it really plays damage. I talk about when we play the Thanksgiving football game against Griswold, the kids on the different schools, want to kill each other. Griswold, Griswold, Griswold. Well, you know what? If the Russians attack, Griswold and Plainfield will be working together on the same team. Or if the Martians attack, all the humans will be on the same team. The labeling is, unfortunately, whether it's religion or ethnicities or countries or colors or genders, it's artificially causing rivalry, which will lead to fear and anger. Are we Americans or are we humans? There can be freedom from fear only when there is self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is the beginning of wisdom, which is the ending of fear. So what's self-knowledge? Self-knowledge is having the ability to understand what you are doing through your mindset, through creating a negative reality. The belief, think about it, almost all fear, I would say 90 to 95% of fear, comes from a thought. Some bad thing happened in the past, you're afraid it might happen again, and you suffer in fear in the present moment about a potential future scenario. When you achieve self-knowledge, you begin to curb that tendency and maybe be a little more content and happy. So fear, why do we have it? When Krishnamurti said, if you try to observe deeply the root cause, he broke down it a couple different ways. First, it's I call it addiction, but over-reliance on knowledge and certainty. Think about the school system. It's all about filling your mind full of knowledge. And as a result, you need to find the right answer. And we live in a world that we think is somehow certain, but it's not. It's the most uncertain thing in the world. As it was said by, I believe, Alan Watts, the wisdom of uncertainty allows the future to be whatever the future is going to be. But we get stuck because we're leaving a place that we know, where we have our routine, where we eat the same breakfast every morning, and we're going out into the great unknown, and then our mind that doesn't have knowledge of the future begins to fear. And the other part of the over-reliance or the addiction is we spend way too much thinking in time. I'd say 90-95% of all of our fears come from thinking. I mean, obviously, if there's a carjacker or if somebody's breaking into your house, there's fear in the moment, or Cujo's trying to attack you. But most of our fears are about a future time. If we could curb our thoughts, if we could live in the present, if we could use choiceless awareness and realize how ignorant our ways of thinking are. And I say that intentionally to be a little bit off-putting. We are ignorant in how we think. We're worried about the future not turning out a certain way. We're full of anxiety in the present because of that. The anxiety in the present we have to live with. We can reduce our negative emotions with a little more self-knowledge and a little more wisdom of uncertainty. Emotional intelligence is really what this is. Intelligence, kids think, is who got the best answers on the test. That's foolish. Emotional intelligence is realizing the role that your thoughts and emotions play in your everyday contentment. One is never afraid of the unknown. One is afraid of the known coming to an end. So when you really think about this, it's kind of deep. Most kids don't enjoy senior year, and then they get to graduation, and a lot of kids don't want to leave because they're afraid of the known coming to an end. When I ask the kids, is change good? Kids will say, yeah, change is good, especially when it's good change and the moment right now stinks. Well, that's not the way life works. Sometimes life's exactly perfect and the change is going to be negative. But ultimately, there's always change. That's the one thing that is certain in life. So he was obviously very keen on changing education. Here's a part from one of his articles. Why are you being educated? What does it mean to be educated? Is it to conform to the patterns of society, acquiring enough knowledge to act skillfully in that society? Does to be educated mean adjusting oneself to society and just following its ways and rules? Is education merely to cultivate one segment of the mind to use knowledge skillfully? Is it possible to educate the total of men instead of cultivating memory as we do and depending on that memory? That's the one part of the brain we're developing in school. It's just memory. The cultivation of memory and dependence on that is part of the degeneration of humanity, because then man merely becomes mechanical, always acting in the field of what he knows. When we are acting in the field of knowledge, we are acting according to a past pattern. So the brain becomes conditioned, it has no flexibility. So going back to the fear thing, we have a memory of something bad that happened in the past, and we then put that past pattern into the future. And that's where the fear and the negative emotions come from. The one thing that school develops is memory, which is hard work, studying, and regurgitation. But that's not really going to get you far in life at all. Intelligence is the capacity to perceive the essential, the what is, and to awaken this capacity in oneself and in others is education. That's what Krishnamurti was trying to do, and that's what this class is trying to do, to awaken you that intelligence isn't just what grade you got in the test, but maybe the ability to awaken to what is and become a little more accepting of it. So a couple of quotes to finish off the presentation on Krishnamurti. It is only when the mind is free from the old that it meets everything new, and in that there is joy. This is the concept we've talked about, whether you want to say the beginner's mind of Zen or the uncarved block of Taoism. When your mind is free in that moment, when it's not being basically blocked in the corner by all of your beliefs, you can actually look at things in a new way and in a positive way. This is my secret. I don't mind what happens. Some kids hate this and they immediately go, well, wait a minute, somebody died? Some terrible thing happened? I'm supposed to love it? I'm not supposed to mind it? Well, obviously there are maybe some exceptions, but the vast majority of things that happen, when you really look at the things that bother you in life, it's foolish, it's ignorant. You're letting something minor bother you. If you can become more accepting to not mind whatever happens, you'll be a little more content. This one bothers some kids, which is why I use it. You are fed on the glorification of success. With the achievement of great success, there is also great sorrow. But most of us are caught up in the desire to achieve, and success is much more important to us than the understanding and dissolution of sorrow. Dissolution meaning getting rid of sorrow. In our American dream world, we are basically bred on you must become something, and the thing you need to become isn't who you are now. You need to be a success. You need to achieve. And that's great. I'm not going to badmouth those concepts. But as I've said a dozen times, the kids who are most driven and the people who are most driven oftentimes drive themselves insane. Because why are you so driven? Why do you want so much of an achievement? You want it because it will bring you happiness, you think. Down the road, all of your hard work and suffering will bring you happiness. It may, or it might just bring you more struggle. Maybe realizing, instead of just moving forward unhappy, that we should analyze the process by which our thoughts and our reality of achievement maybe at times keep us from being happy. You can only be afraid of what you think you know. Once again, getting to the point that our fears come from our thoughts. And if you don't expect that the future is going to be like the one bad thing that happened in the past, you could be more free of fear. And the final quote, happiness is strange. It comes when you are not seeking it. When you are not making an effort to be happy, then, unexpectedly, mysteriously, happiness is there, born of purity, of a loveliness of a being. We search outside of our body, externally, for something that will make us happy. A new pair of shoes, a date, a nice meal, a motorcycle. All of these things will bring us happiness for a little bit of time. But when you stop seeking it and you relax and you just be and you begin to accept what is, happiness and contentment can be part of your everyday. I hope you enjoyed the discussion of Jiddu Krishnamurti. Please write journals and I will talk to you soon.